Yeah, today is the 22nd of March. So we got a few things on the agenda. We talk about the July 2022 release. Like I listed a few specifications and to be updated, and also the new spec. And then today I got a team working is heavily involved in the MicroProfile metrics with Don Bond. Don is on holiday, so a team kind of like come to this call and tell us a little bit more about metrics 5.0. Because the last time Don came here and present 3 options, which way to go, and then the metrics group had a further conversation, and also did I helped with the Twitter poll to find more information from the customers, etc. So, team, do you want to share your screen or talk this through about metrics?
Sure.
Let me stop share, and then you can share.
Good idea. Okay, I hope everyone can see the screen. This is the same document that Don had shared in the earlier meeting. I've simply updated it here near the top to reflect the latest outcomes of recent meetings. And basically, you'll remember we had discussed 3 options. And the option that the working group for MP metrics arrived at was what was formerly known as option 3, which is that Metrics 5 will, as in the past, continue to provide an API which is agnostic about implementation underneath and vendor neutral, and that the API will evolve so that it aligns much more closely with the micrometer model than with the drop wizard model that was the earlier inspiration. But vendors can continue to implement it however they choose. Informal discussions suggest that many vendors might actually choose to use micrometer underneath, but that's not mandated by the spec, as implementations ought not to be generally, we felt. So people could use micrometer or OpenTelemetry metrics or anything they want as the implementation. If they pass the TCK, then of course they comply with the spec. And so this was the strong consensus of those who have been actively participating in that working group for the last many weeks and months. And as Emily referred to a moment ago, it was also reinforced by the poll that Emily set up that asked people who are currently using MP metrics, given the options of using a micrometer API or the OpenTelemetry API or an MP metrics API, which would they choose? And so you can see the results on the screen. Almost 62% said they would use a neutral MP API. And so we felt pretty good about that. Obviously, it's not a huge sample, but it's not trivial either. And so that's the direction that we're going to be going. There will be a number of ways in which existing metrics will change their semantics or disappear entirely. As an example, simple timer, which is there now. There's no analog in micrometer. There is a timer in micrometer, and you can accomplish essentially the same things with that. So there will be a part of the spec, perhaps an appendix, will be the equivalent of a migration guide for users that have applications that are using metric types that will be disappearing, what suggestions would be for how they can migrate forward. Obviously, major release, this is the time to make those kinds of breaking changes. And we'll try to provide people as much help as we can as to how to navigate the. So that's the quick thumbnail sketch. We had talked at length about the options in the earlier meeting, and this is, as I mentioned, this is what option 3 was, what we had described as option 3 when Don introduced these before. It's essentially that same thing, and that's the current plan for the direction. there will probably be issues beginning to surface now in the MP metrics repository about the kinds of changes in the API that I was just summarizing, and making sure that there's discussion about those deprecations, how to mitigate the impact on existing users and so forth. So the rubber will begin to meet the road in terms of actually making progress on drafting the spec.
Is this a long-term direction? So it'll continue to evolve with MP APIs, or, you know, with telemetry, with open telemetry beginning to, or are they in beta or whatever? Sorry, I'm not quite up to speed on that. It's also kind of a, you know, quote, standard, unquote. So what are the longer term plans beyond 5.0?
The longer term plans are to basically track what's going on with open telemetry carefully. The feeling was that the current footprint of Micrometer in the marketplace is significant and is a model that developers have seen, have used, and are familiar with. Open telemetry metrics, not quite so much on those scores. It certainly is likely to become even more of a major player going forward. And so just as we have in thinking about the plan for 5.0, we're going to need to, on an ongoing basis, keep track of what's up with open telemetry metrics, track it as best we can, participate in that effort as best we can, and help make sure that, you know, whatever alignment we can find stays strong.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that we should participate on the open telemetry group as well. Make sure they don't do something completely controversial and we couldn't consume.
Well, with all due respect, I think that it's not fair to use that Twitter poll as valid data for making a decision, or at least for helping making a decision. So Emily is a champion of MicroProfile. I mean, most of her followers are going to be MicroProfile, so they're going to be biased with the answer they're going to give. And so if you, for instance, if you ask Josh Long to post this as the same Twitter poll, most likely going to have different results. And the amount of answers on that Twitter poll is really not significant. So I really think that's a really mistake to try to make a decision based on a biased Twitter poll with a couple of, or actually 100 answers or a little more. Also, there is a thread on the MicroProfile group which the exact same question, and only 2 people answer, and by coincidence they actually answer the 2 options that they're not the winning here on the poll, right? So I really think that this Twitter poll should not be taken into account to make a decision.
So you'll notice that I used the term, it's reinforced, if informally, by the Twitter poll. Trust me, that was not determinative. It was helpful to see what people were saying. And if we don't listen to our user base, then who do we listen to?
Yeah, but then
just apart from the poll, there have been, as I know you're aware, there have been weeks and months of discussion in the working group on exactly this question, and which of these options might make sense. We came to this group earlier.
Sure, I'm not trying to question the decision. I'm just trying to understand how that came to be, because me as an external viewer, and yes, I recognize that I'm not participating on the metrics side of things, but I look into the Twitter poll, and then I look into the thread that actually Don started on the mailing list, and I don't see how with that information we reach that decision. As I mentioned, I mean, we didn't even have enough participation on the thread that Don posted, but what Don posted is not even voted here.
So, Roberto, in the last technical call, I think we discussed this. So we are trying to work out our strategy in MicroProfile. Yeah, if we target a Spring user, sure, you shouldn't do MicroProfile. You should do Spring way to do things. But that does not, I mean, fit in well with our strategy. So basically, what we are doing, we are trying to look after our existing MicroProfile end users. So that's why it's pretty good, like use my Twitter poll. I mean, because maybe my followers MicroProfile kind of the users. So surely their decision should be considered rather than considered some Spring users. They have nothing to do with MicroProfile.
That was an
So
example, right?
Sorry, let me finish. Even if we do like use the micrometer, they have nothing to do with the MicroProfile. So for our MicroProfile and the users, we should look at their need. Besides, I mean, the Don's poll, he sent an email, so it's not many responses. It's maybe based on two things. One is people don't want to like reply email, and second thing is maybe people stopped listening or like reading the Google group emails. So you can see how many views in that thread. Not many views. I think maybe nowadays people listen on Twitter more. So which explains. I think he's a one person.
What you're saying is completely contradictory from what Tim said, right?
It's just two people, isn't it? One people said they want to use the like directly uses use the one. So which is the first option. Is one of the first option. The other one use the second option. I don't see why they not reflected. It is truly reflected.
No, I mean, what you're saying is contradictory because I mean,
Why is it contradictory?
Because Tim just said that the Twitter poll was just to reinforce it, and I mean, you're saying that you use that for making a decision as well.
No, I think a team already said they already made a decision and then they put it reinforced informally. So they just want to see whether their decision is have any customer base. So this is informally. You could delete this if you don't like this poll. But
I mean, I just think that it just shows like a biased approach on thing. I mean, don't take me wrong. If MicroProfile Metrics wants to follow a particular approach, and that's been the path that I know. I mean, we had a discussion about that in the mailing list, which did have a lot of participation in the past, and that was not a long time ago. But I mean, if you want to follow that direction, that's fine. Just don't say that it was the users that wanted, because I don't see a lot of interest in that. And I mean, when you're actually saying that there's only like 2 votes and not many people watching that thread, well, maybe we should also consider there is not much interest in MicroProfile metrics. That's also that's a thing that you should consider as well.
There's many kind of assumptions. I think
Sure.
Yes, only 36 views on that thread. So it's like this tracking this 36 people.
Yeah, I don't know. So I have a couple of thoughts here. One is I actually don't know how many people use the web interface versus just view emails, right? I tend to use the web interface. So I'm probably some of those views, but I don't think a lot of people use it, the Google web interface. The second thing is, well, what alternative means do we have of gathering user feedback, right? So Emily put out a poll, right? Because it's it's lightweight. It's a lightweight thing to do, right? It's easy to do. We got feedback. I think we had an AI to kind of individually poll the customer bases, Don't know if I've seen results from that. But I mean, what other approaches could we take to get data, right? That's just a thought. How blind are we flying?
Yeah, what I meant 2 weeks ago when having a vote within our community, I said it would be a good idea to use the mailing list, the email mailing list, not a Google group and not a Twitter service or channel, because if we use a proprietary company channel, then we exclude a lot of people. That my thoughts. If we want to have valid conversation that is accessible by everybody, then we should keep in history for ever. Then we should use the mailing list. For an informal view, it might be okay to use a specific other channel, but then the result may be biased, as Roberto said.
What are we going to?
Sorry?
I'm sorry, Jan. Just finish.
But what I want to make sure it's perfectly fine if the metrics group decides to change that API to be conform to micrometer. From my perspective, if it is possible to use OpenTelemetry metrics in parallel. And maybe as a vendor, it might be interesting to use one implementation for both aspects, having the MP metrics API and the OpenTelemetry API get used in one implementation that takes care. And as far as I understand that is possible with that approach, right?
I wanted to ask, what are we trying to do now? Are we going to question the decision the metrics specification team made? Or are we going to influence that decision by saying that the Twitter poll is not relevant and we have to use some other marketing strategies to collect users' feedback? What are we trying to do now?
I think this is purely down to metrics group. I don't think we should just say, okay, even if we do that, who will work on the spec? If we just, they have spent, as the team said, months time trying to work out things. They already made a decision, and then they said, okay, we made the decision, we'll go with the third option. And just wondering, are there any other, feedback? Even though the Twitter says the kind of the no, I want to use the API. I think it's completely fine for the spec group. They just are trying to do something, they work out their self.
Twitter, all the polls are okay to gather the data, but we should not make decisions based on that. And in this case, I totally agree with Roberto. But it looks like, and team actually said that Twitter poll was not a driver to make the decision, just confirms what the decision they were thinking about is kind of relevant. So again, what are we trying to do now? Are we trying to question it and say, hey, no, this is not good. You need to actually choose another option. Or are we trying to...
That's completely fine. They can choose whatever option they want. I just want to make sure that we're not like picking and coming back to John's question about how we can gather feedback. So one of the issues that I see is when we do these Twitter polls, and I'm talking about myself as well, if I do them on my profile, if we do in the example I gave with Josh Long, probably give a completely different result, is that we're limiting ourselves into a subset of the people that use the technology, right? So most likely only people that answer MicroProfile gave a response to that poll, right? But we want that questions or polls or wherever feedback we want to collect to reach people that don't use the platform. So we can gather those feedback and well improve the platform so those people can come to the platform and use it. And that's the tricky thing to do. And I'm not a marketing people, I'm not a marketing person, so I don't know how to do that. But that's for me, this the answer for John's question is we should try to figure out a way where these polls or these questions or whatever are not in a subset of people that we already know that are in the platform and want things in a certain way, but also able to reach the external and the outside so we can bring more people in.
If you let me. So as a follow-up to Emily's poll, I also created one in the same thread. Is over there. It didn't got that many votes until now. Around well, a fifth of the original poll had. And the question was very simple. So if you are using metrics, in which kind of projects are you using them? Are using the spec? And around half of the people are using it only on demos and POCs. It has not that many votes, but it's important to have in mind that we are not getting the information on who is using this properly. So as you guys mentioned, so one of the things that we should probably do is to incentivize companies and people to say that they use this or that MicroProfile spec, so we can have a catalog of companies that we can show up, leverage this. Because in the end, we might choose one or other option, but if only a handful of people are using this in production, we also don't want to certainly do code just for a handful of people. We want MicroProfile metrics, whatever version it has, to expand its reach and be used with as many people as we can. And depending on the option that we choose, we will decrease or improve the chances of using the API. And I think this is the most important in the long term, not pleasing the current user base or whatever. We need to understand how can we grow this better. And I think what we talked until this moment doesn't address this.
I think, yeah, I think that's maybe a separate thing. Maybe it's kind of folding into the kind of, we could have a further conversation in not directly related to this, is the kind of how can we get the feedback? Like this is applicable to other specs as well. But I think I want to just say, I want to just say the spec team, they make a decision, like which way they want to go. So it's for overall, like gathering feedback and etc. I think that's kind of wider conversation. So I think that's a good item for the next live hangout. Like how can we gather feedback? How can we find our customers? I think a lot of open source projects have the same problem.
Yeah, but for the technical aspect, if the MP metrics decides to create a metrics API within MicroProfile, it should be possible to have an MP telemetry metrics that uses the OpenTelemetry API directly in parallel. So we are not blocking us. Then there might be two ways to solve the problem. And I'm sure in the future, the combined approach of OpenTelemetry, having the option with the additional baggage specification, to link the 3 dimension of observability together will be the future. That's my opinion, and a few I talked to last week on Javaland. Yeah, but of course, if the decision is MP metrics will move forward with that self-defined API, that's fine. If the other way around is possible in the future.
Yeah, I think as a team will quite rightly put, they are going to this direction right now, and they closely observe open telemetry metrics movement. I think if down the road, if open telemetry metrics, I mean, become more popular, I think that we'll discuss again. And I think this is a moving target. We have to keep on moving. And not saying, okay, we'll just stay put. This is a final, verdict or something like that.
And do we have a marketing committee? We do, right?
We do,
So,
yes.
So about the polls and about the targeting audience, this is a topic for a marketing committee. Someone needs to bring it there, right? And coming back to that, I actually only partially agree that this question is important for only new people who are not familiar with Micronaut. I don't think so. I think it's mostly important for current users who actually use MicroProfile already. And because they have application on MicroProfile, and they need to know which path it evolves. And they may have some suggestions how to evolve it, right? So this audience is actually quite important, not only the new users. New users may use MicroProfile, may not use MicroProfile. They are using something else. They used to some other things, right? So saying that we need to base our decisions only on their opinion or mostly on their opinion, I think it's totally wrong.
Yeah, so it's basically, I think this kind of, yeah, I agree. So it's basically, I mean,
So
which audience you want to ask. If you ask Spring users, you asking the irrelevant users, they will give you a completely different reason. And then it's wrong to influence, to based on that to make a decision. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, that was me interrupting. Yeah, so I'll bring this up to the marketing team about how we want to approach polls where the working group wants to make, pretty major decisions, right? Maybe we can find out some consistent way to do it across these types of issues, right? So that's a separate, I completely agree with Dimitri about that. So I'll see if I can bring it up at the next marketing call and see if we could just add it to the agenda until we figure something out.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because we have several means of reaching people now, but reaching the right people is more the question. Grow the fan base and the people we can reach.
Yeah. Okay, so that's thank you so much, Tim. I think here's kind of the, your group just make a decision, go with it, and there's a side issue, directly related to your group. So how can we gather further feedback?
Yep, understood. Yep, sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so then so this is the matrix 5.0, and then OpenAPI 3.1 is currently quite a few people are working on it. And then also similar thing, also is the GWT 2.1. So this one, OpenAPI is trying to also to bring in the beam validation integration in. So that'll be something is one of our goals in the program plan. So the new spec, and currently we cannot in the last couple of weeks is because conferences and etc. and then time change, not much happening. So hopefully from next week we're just trying to move faster with the telemetry 1.0. So it's with this, since we are doing like a July release, so based on how soon we can release the telemetry, if we can release like in May or June's time, and we could have kind of opportunity and trying to get telemetry into the July release, and then remove the open tracing from the July release. So anyway, we have to look at the schedule for the telemetry one. For the Java version, for the compilation version for the the July release, which will be the MicroProfile 6, because the metrics has some backward incompatible changes. So it's kind of the, I'm not sure, I have not heard any other spec want to increase their compilation Java version to more than 8. So in that case, I would just say we just stay with 8, and the implementation can certify with 8, 11, 17.
I think that is a bad decision because we are staying on top of the Jakarta EE 10 specs, and they are require already 11. And we should compile to 11 so we can use the release property in Maven. When there is one spec included that needs a source level of 8 and separate configuration options for the Java SE version, you always get into trouble with that. Then some part of the build will break. So having 11 as a minimum does not change anything for the users, because they always have to use 11 because of the Jakarta EE specs from the core profile then. So we definitely should, for the build management and usage, define 11 as a minimum.
I think you talk about EE 11 based on the EE 10. MicroProfile 6 will be released in July. At the moment, we have not thought about to based on the EE 10 as yet. We will be based on the EE 9.1.
But I thought
sorry, go ahead.
I thought you already reached a decision on the compilation level earlier this year. I think it was even in the program plan, but I'm not sure anymore.
In the program plan is
11 plus we defined there.
If someone could find a reason to go to 17, that was perfect. But otherwise, we should stay at 11, I guess. If my mind serves me well, that was the decision.
No, it's the evaluate moving source code. This is the 2022 evaluate moving code source to Java 11.
11 plus.
Yeah, 11 plus.
But we already said we use 11.
I don't think that we said, though, is Roberto sent an email to the mailing list and nobody responded on the to see whether what people think about the Java moving Java source code source. And there is
But
a kind of,
the email was not about moving the source yet. It was just about collecting features that may improve the APIs higher than 8.
yeah. Is similar, isn't it? You if you want to use like more than 8, you have to move the source to.
Sure, but I mean,
Private.
one of the discussions that we have is one thing is allowing users to write 11, 17, or wherever. A different thing is moving the source to
Yeah.
17. Because I mean, if you have the source at 11, it will still run on 17 just fine. That's not the point. It's just that until now, we haven't figured out, or at least no one was able, as far as I remember, no one was able to list a single feature higher than 11 that will benefit our APIs. And if that's the case, why are we going to move the source to 17?
Oh,
I
we are
think the
not talking
exception-
about 17 now. We are talking about 11
Sure,
as a minimum.
I mean,
And
but we
what
were
I'm-
discussing 11 and 17.
What I'm talking about is I want to get rid of that separate definition for source and target of some SE level. I want to use the release property that takes care of the Java SE version. A single property for everything, and that fixes a lot of issues too.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, I think that, I mean, even if you're not going to benefit too much on the APIs, I mean, we know for sure that at least we have the Flow API for reactive messaging, and it will benefit that spec, even if it's not part of the platform. To be able to benefit properly, all the MicroProfile projects should be on the same source level version. And if we don't move to 11, then it's going to be harder for reactive messaging to move to 11 to use that API, while others are in a different version. So yes, I agree that we should definitely move to 11. For 17, I'm not so sure.
Even I don't know. I mean, moving to 11 again is a kind of the, even if reactive messaging move to 11, and then is kind of the, it can still work with the other specs. They are on Java 8 because they can continue to run. As I mean, for the runtime, the most of them support 11, 17. So again, like for the specs, I think if they use the Java 11 features, they go ahead to use Java 11. But if like they just for the sake of move to Java 11, not using any of them, I do not see the point.
Well, because at the platform level, we did define that runtimes are able to certify error 8 and higher.
Yes, we do.
So that's okay, but 8 and higher does mean that 8 is included. So I think it's going to be a little bit weird that you may have an environment that is running MicroProfile platform at 8, and I don't know, it may have only environment only has support 8, but if you want to put reactive messaging, then that's not going to work over there. So it's going to be a little bit of confusing that you have like platforms in one, the MicroProfile platform in a minimum required level, which is 8, and then you're going to have specs outside the platform which have a different requirement. I know they are outside the platform, but I think it's just easier to just make it consistent across all the projects.
I don't know when the reactive messaging will move to Java 11.
Well, if it doesn't move, if you don't make the decision, it will never move, right? I mean, they cannot make that decision alone.
I think they can. I think is right to send a message saying, okay, spec team, you can evaluate whether you want to move to 11 or not. So basically, it's like if for example, metrics team, they decide to make 11, sure, okay. So like MicroProfile 6 will be 11. So if like nobody move to Java 11, I don't think it's kind of that's very superficial to say, okay, even though you are on 8, but I force you to be 11.
Okay, let's be practical on something. So what is the issue? What are the issues of us moving to 11?
So the issue is like if we move to 11, but the spec, the APIs still just use 8 features, and then the people who are on Java 8 are no longer to be able to use the release. So that's the issue.
I mean, is that a bad thing? That happens all the time with new libraries and new versions. I mean, even Spring is going to move, I don't know, to 11 and 17 to require those. Quarkus does require 11. Even small Y implementations on the new Jakarta version, we're going to require people to run that on 11. I mean, it's becoming painful to support 8 at this point at the implementation level. I even see that Elidon, the last version of Elidon, is only for 17. So why are we still want to support 8 at this point?
So Open Liberty support all of them. So basically what I'm saying is the kind of because API, because we give the freedom to the spec team to like allow them to move up. If they decided to stay with 8, why we force them? Besides, I mean,
cannot be a decision.
Sorry, can I just finish? Besides, and the runtime support like 11, 17, and then the end user will get the exactly same thing. I don't know. I mean, what kind of benefit we are trying to get to force to move to Java 11.
This cannot be a decision made by the spec teams individually. I mean, we never took the decision before. I mean, when MicroProfile started, Java 8 was already out there. So this is the first time we're making that decision. And I believe this is a very critical decision to allow each spec team to make that individually. It needs to be consistent across all the projects. It's just crazy and nonsense if we allow each spec team to choose their Java version. It doesn't make any sense. Now, I understand if Liberty wants to keep supporting 8, but for how long? I mean, we're gonna have to move that at that point. I mean, even if you look on MicroProfile JOT, some of the new TLES and keys are required are only available in JDK 11. They're not even available on JDK 8, so I'm not even sure if that's even implementable. I mean, it's always implementable unless if you do all the code yourself, but you're not going to be leveraging what's out there in the JDK.
Just one note. I think this is very similar to the Jakarta namespace updates. And there should be some consistency across the board. And I think we can all agree that Java 8 is kind of old, and we should probably start to think on giving the users a message that they need to upgrade at some point. That's my opinion.
So in the Jakarta, so basically what they are doing, like for updated spec, they can you can move to Java 11. So basically what I'm saying the same, like for the updated spec, they can choose to move up to Java 11. And then for other unchanged spec, they still stayed with Java 8. So in this case, like once there's a spec, move up to Java 11, the whole release will be Java 11. So it's fine for other spec unchanged, they stay with Java 8, but the whole release basically is Java 11.
But this is not the Jakarta, this is not Jakarta, this is MicroProfile.
I know, I just further to what Bruno said. So it's
John has his hand raised. Please, John, go ahead.
Oh my God, it worked.
Huh?
Raising my hand. Sorry, I finally found the icon there for doing that. So there's a pragmatic perspective to this. So I heard, Roberto mentioned that, where obviously Quarkus is going to have a minimum of 11, small rye is going to basically be requiring, I think, a minimum of 11. So from a pragmatic perspective, I know a lot of projects and runtimes depend on small rye implementations, right? So the question then becomes, who is going to, if we decide to include 8, who's going to do that work in small rye?
I think that for 8 is not, oh, you mean the small rye is
All
no
small
longer
all small rye
compiled.
implementations are going to move to 11. We announced that on the mailing list a month ago, or even like 2 months ago. I can't remember when it was. But with the move to Jakarta for MicroProfile 5, we're moving the API. We're moving the required minimum level to 11.
So you are saying is the small rye is basically is kind of the no longer work with JDK, right?
At the moment, it does, because we haven't added any breaking APIs between 8 and 11. But once we move to Jakarta and we start building everything in Jakarta, then we plan to start leveraging the JDK 11 APIs on small rye. I mean, the decision is not only, like John said, at the API to spec level. I mean, you're also limiting what the implementations can do, because they can only build on 8, right?
Yeah, and you
yes,
also limit the users in the usage of the build tool Maven when you allow 8. Then you have to do configuration that is compatible with 8, and yet you cannot use the release property. And that's really painful that I still cannot use it in real projects, because one part is still requiring a target and a source level configured separately. And I really want to get rid of that.
So
in the MicroProfile use case, you don't stay at 8. In a monolith where you cannot migrate for some reason, you might want to do it, but in a MicroProfile, or in a microservice use case,
I'll give another example, right? So the reason why we have to migrate Quarkus to 11 or to mandate 11 was because GraalVM is mandating 11 as well, right? So there's going to be more and more things that are going to mandate to be 11. Now, right now, we have to write a lot of workaround code and use multi-release jars to support both 8 and 11, but that's not scalable, and we want to get rid of that. So we also want to move all the implementations of small rye to 11, so we can better align with Quarkus and to leverage new APIs. I mean, even if reactive messaging, the API doesn't want to use flow, we want to use them on the implementation level. Right? There are new methods that you can leverage on optionals and streams that we cannot use because we are restricted to 8. So I understand liberty and being able to support older runtimes, but at the same time, this is limiting everyone, implementations, APIs. And I mean, 8 is already quite old. I mean, a lot of people already moved to 11. And I mean, if we don't make a step to move, then we're not going to incentive anyone to move anyway.
Okay, since I think most of you want to move 11, yeah, I will go with the flow. The other thing, what I suddenly realized, the new spec, we want to use 11. Oh, even though open telemetry kind of work with 8 or even 6, right? The open telemetry. But anyway, if we like the MicroProfile telemetry 1.0 use 11, so that's bring up the MicroProfile 6 to 11. Okay, let's say if it's 11, Java level, are we going to go through are we only update the compilation for the specs listed here, only the four of them? Or are we going to like re-release the others as well? So what's the scope?
I mean, you just update language and source and target compatibility to 11, and that's it. I mean, then specs, if they want to use any JDK 11 API, they're free to do so.
What I mean is that because the compilation version will be 11, will that force we need to do another release for the spec? Because that will be recompiled, right?
Yes, we need to update
Yes,
everything.
you need to do a release
Yeah.
for every spec.
So
Yeah.
this will be a major release, goes through to re-release all the spec, right?
Correct.
Yes, because it's a breaking change. Yeah.
And if you think about it, if you don't do this now, then you're gonna have to wait another year for another breaking change release.
So with this, I think we should do it sooner rather than later. So basically, since it's going to, I mean, all the ballot and etc. So it's all of the spec need to do a program plan, basically release plan, and bring up their Java version. Maybe it makes sense, like at the same time, we just remove the open tracing from platform. For that one, do we want to move that to 11 and make it a standalone, or we leave it? What about MP open tracing?
I mean, I think that, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, do we want to move up, or we just directly remove from we just add the telemetry 1.0? And
Yeah, I'm not sure if you are able to just move it out. I mean, technically nothing stopping us from doing that. Now John was looking into how things can be deprecated or moved away. But I'm not sure if you have an answer on that right now. My only concern about open tracing is I'm not completely sure. I mean, we had that issue with Quarkus already, where we actually have to fork some of their stuff because they're not maintained anymore to re-release some of their stuff. And we do have a couple of dependencies that depend directly from open tracing libraries. I believe because that's mostly API stuff, it should be fine, but it may not be as easy to just come over there and then change the source and level like we're going to do with the other specs.
right.
I think we should discuss this at a more low level and understand how complicated this is. Overall, I think it would be nice if we could have a release that had open tracing and the new implementation, and people could, well, switch over with time. But we need to see the details, I think.
It would be nice if we could release an open tracing version which uses the shim to use in the implementation part, the open telemetry implementation, to fulfill that what was requested. That would be nice, and then we should try to have it on Java SE 11 too. But if that is too much work and nobody has time to do it, then maybe we can do it later, separate outside the platform release, or skip it completely.
Yeah, I think we can make a decision when we release. I think priority is to get some MicroProfile telemetry released, and then it will be like much easier to make a decision then. I mean, what to do with MicroProfile open tracing. Okay, I think yeah, that's a good conversation. It's the top of the hour. So I think in summary, like metrics 5.0, at least they have the direction, we can go ahead with that. And then like going forward, I mean, how can we gather some feedback? So discuss more. I think is for this Java version, I think is kind of the, I will take a to do and send the notes to the mailing list, just saying in the 6, MicroProfile 6, plan to move to Java 11 to see what other people say about it. Are there any other final comments? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Talk to you next week. Next week is the live hangout. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Next
Bye-bye.
week is as usual. You have your normal time. This week you're all over the place. Yeah. Bye.